The thing is, when it comes to website security, you got to really understand that a CA is quintessential, a certificate authority. Okay, so let me first define it for you. So when you think about a CA, I want you to think about a critical tool for establishing validation, for establishing encryption, and for establishing also data assurance. So CAs are critical in securing online communications and identities. The whole idea here is to make sure that any person within the online equation is actually who they say they are. Okay, not only the transmitter but also the receiver. So the sender and receiver. So that's what the CA really does. Okay, so CAs once again are critical in securing online communications and identities. So, but what exactly does a CA do? Well, the thing is that when you think about a CA, think about a trusted organization that issues digital certificates for websites and other entities. So it can be for websites, it can be for digital platforms, it can be for landing pages, it can be for anything that's digitally important or that's digitally sort of quintessential. And the certificate authority actually its role will cover many geographies. It doesn't matter if the organization is actually hosted on a server in the States or in Europe or in Africa or in Asia or in China. I mean, it really, it doesn't really depend. So geography is irrelevant in this case, okay? And CAs validate a website domain, and depending on the type of certificate, the ownership of the website, and then issue TLS SSL certificates that are trusted by web browsers like Chrome, Safari, Firefox, and Microsoft Edge. Okay, so you have that layer. So a CA is actually the middleman, the security middleman that actually makes sure the whole process is actually validated. So CAs will help keep the internet a safer place by verifying websites and other entities to enable more trust in online communications and transactions, especially if you are speaking about websites with a public facing profile. So I just explained to you what a CA is. Okay. Now, what is the role of a CA this year? Well, a certificate authority is actually a company that really does way more than just validating information. The company also validates the identities of entities. That's what I said before, the transmitters and but also the receivers. So I'm speaking about websites, email addresses, companies, or individual persons. Okay, and the CA actually not only validates the identities of entities, but also bind them to cryptographic keys through the issuance of electronic documents known as digital certificates. So what happens here is that a digital certificate provides authentication by serving as a credential to validate the identity of the entity that it is issued to. You have encryption for secure communication over insecure networks such as the internet. And then you have integrity of documents signed with the certificate so that they cannot be altered by a third party in transit. I mean, stuff happens. This is a pretty crazy world, so you want to have that extra layer of assurance. So these certificates allow secure, encrypted communication between two parties through public key cryptography. The CA verifies the certificate applicant's identity and issues a certificate containing their public key, and the CA will then digitally sign the issued certificate with their own private key, which establishes trust in the certificate's validity. So CAs like SSL.com, embed their root certificates into operating systems, browsers, and other applications like Adobe products. In the case of document signing certificates, this is pretty good because it allows them to issue SSL, TLS certificates for websites, email certificates, code signing certificates, and more. And relying parties can then trust certificates chained to this root CAs. Now, why do we need certificate authorities in the first place? Well, without certificate authorities, shopping, banking, or browsing online would be less secure. Think about it. Everyday activity will be less secure because data entered into a web form will not be secured, and it could potentially be captured by a hacker who is sniffing the data between the browser and the server. However, CAs validate organizations and individuals to help ensure that only legitimate websites get a TLS certificate. So there are over 100 different certificate authorities around the world that validate businesses and sites across the globe, okay? So notably, imposters may still attempt to take advantage of certificates, so web users should actually still be familiar with site trust indicators, including site deals, to know if a website is really secure. Additionally, you can check for identifying information about the certificate owner, like organizational name, location, and more, included in higher assurance digital certificates. Now, let me speak to you about the process here. How does a CA validate and issue certificates? It's a pretty convoluted process, but I will try to really summarize things for you in a clear way. Okay, so when requesting a certificate from a CA, what happens here is that the applicant first generates a public and private key pair. So the applicant can be the transmitter of the info, the sender of the info. It can be your business, it can be your project, it can be anything. It can be your websites. So the private key should remain under the applicant's sole control and ownership. However, in some cases, the private key may be generated and stored securely in a hardware security module, an HSM, controlled by the issuing CA. So this is something to really think about. Now, the applicant then sends a certificate signing request containing their public key and other identifying details to the CA through an online form, right? So this is something to really think about, especially from a scalability point of view. Next, the CA will take steps to validate the applicant's identity and the right to claim credentials such as domain names for server certificates or email addresses for email certificates in the CSRs. Again, CSR it stands for Certificate Signing Request. Now, the process actually varies by certificate type and validation level. It really depends also on your geography. So if you are in Europe or you are in the States, for instance, you wouldn't have the same protocol. Let me give you an example. To issue an OV or EV SSL certificate, the CA will require business documents and authentication of the applicant's identity and ownership of domain names. Okay, so that's what I mean. By the way, the EV is actually the highest, the most secure validation request. Okay, so that's important. And so if validation is successful, the CA issues the certificate containing the details and public and public key from the CSR, and the CA digitally signs the issued certificates with their own private key to confirm they actually verified the they verified the identity. So, what are the certificates CAs issued used for? Well, they can be used for a lot of reasons. I mean, certificates are used in different ways depending on the certificate type. I mean, basically, depending on the digital asset that you are really requesting, you're requesting validation from a CA for, you will need a certain level of validation. But also, that validation will take the time that it takes. I mean, an EV, for instance, takes more time. An OV is not going to take that much time. Okay, so basically, sorry about that. For TLS SSL certificates, the applicants installs the certificate on their web server to enable HTTPS and encrypt communication. Now, the private key remains securely stored on the server. So that's something to really think about. Now, for code signing certificates, the private key is used to digitally sign software, executables, scripts, etc. So that's something to really think about. And S or MIME certificates for email security are installed in email clients and used to encrypt, sign, or authenticate emails. So what I'm trying to say here is that you are looking for a process whereby every part of the email, every part of the email equation is being secured, is being validated, is being encrypted, is being decrypted as well. Client authentication certificates are installed on devices or users' systems to authenticate their identity to servers or applications. This could be for, let's say, in-house projects, for instance, okay, for large organizations. And also, document signing certificates are installed in document signing applications and used to apply certified digital signatures to electronic documents. Okay, so the proper use of the private key is actually essential for each certificate type and purpose. So you got to really ask yourself, why do you need a certificate type in the first place? So let me talk to you about the three main types of TLS certificates, because this will give you more information about what really needs to be done. I think I've said this before, but I want to go a little further. I spoke about DV, OV, and EV, and I said that EV was actually the highest, and EV offered the highest layer of security. I'll explain why. So there are three different types of TLS certificates that CAs issue. You have DV, so DV stands for domain validation. OV stands for organization validation, and EV stands for extended validation. So CAs validate each type of certificate to a different level of user trust. Again, it depends on the trust that you want to really position your organization for. So basically, EV is the highest level of assurance available. So the difference between the OV and EV is that a CA takes additional steps to validate the certificate requester, giving end users even more confidence in the website's legitimacy. So DV, you are talking about ownership of domain validated certificates. This is confirmed by having the applicants prove control of the domain. So however, DV certificates do not offer identifying organizational information, so they're not recommended for commercial purposes. Next, you have OV. So organization validated certificates are authenticated by the CA against the business registry databases hosted by governments. CAs may require certain documents and contact personnel to ensure that OV certificates contain legitimate business information. This is the standard type of certificate required on a commercial or public-facing website. Next, you have EV. So extended validation certificates offer the highest level of authentication to safeguard brands and protect users. They are used by the world's leading organizations, including over half of the top 400 to 500 e-commerce sites. So that's really cool. Now, what are the types of certificates that CAs issue? Well, you have code signing certificates. So this is used to sign software releases and validate software from the vendor or developer. You have email certificates. So using the S/MIME protocol, emails can be protected and validated, proving authorship and preventing tampering. You have document signing certificates, so you can sign legally binding documents in Adobe, Microsoft, or other programs to ensure they are unaltered and trusted. You have device certificates. Here you can secure IoT devices. And finally, user or client certificates. Then those are used to authenticate individuals. So that's really fantastic. So what does a digital certificate contain? Let's really quickly talk about that. I mean, the thing is that when you think about a digital certificate, you want to really refer to an electronic document that binds an identity to a cryptographic key paired through the CA's signatures. This is important. I want to go back to that in the sense that it is not geographically limited. Okay, it is more cryptographically limited. So it doesn't matter if your organization is in Asia or Africa or North America or Latin America or Europe. The cryptographic affiliation is there. Now, certificates may contain information such as domain names, email addresses, business or individual identity. So that's really important to think about. You have the public key used to enable encryption. That's really good also in terms of capability. You have the issuing CA details, the validity period. So this is going to really be quite essential in terms of giving you or giving your users an extra layer of assurance in the integrity of the data. So that you have the validity period. You have the certificate serial number. You have the signature to prevent tampering. So that's kind of cool. So by issuing actually a certificate, the CA states that the public key contained within belongs to the listed entities. So this gives the public an extra layer of security, okay? And the corresponding private key is kept secret by the applicant, and the public and private key pair allows secure encrypted communication through SSL, TLS, and other protocols. So something to really think about. So let me talk to you about trust. How do CAs help establish trust in the whole let's say information system? One thing I want to say here is that you have to understand that basically for an issued certificate to be trusted, the issuing a CA must be trusted, right? Trust actually starts at the top or at the bottom, if you will. So CAs establish trust through certificate chains, and they always make sure the chain is actually like integrity in the chain is assured across the board. So a certificate chain links your end entity certificate back to a trusted root CA certificate through intermediate issuing CAs. So trusted root CA certificates, that's called a trust anchor. The intermediate CA certificates issued by the root, and the end entity certificate issued to the applicant. So you have the end entity certificate, okay. And what I want to say here is that browsers, devices, operating systems, and applications come with pre-installed root CA certificates from trusted authorities like SSL.com. So by extending trust along the chain, SSL.com can issue a trusted certificates, okay? Now, certificate chains allow trust to be extended in a scalable, secure way, and every link in the chain traces back to a trusted anchor. And if any link in the chain is missing or untrusted, clients will see errors when accessing the site with that certificate installed. Now, a proper chain is essential, okay? That's something to think about. Now, if you look at CAs such as SSL.com, they actually provide trusted certificates that are actually valid for let's say a long, like a number of like a specific period. Okay, so think about SSL certificate as a certificate authority. Think about SSL.com as a certificate authority that issues different types of trusted digital certificates. For instance, you have SSL TLS certificates that secure websites with HTTPS. You have SMIME certificates for securing email. You have code signing certificates for verifying software. You have client certificates for authenticating devices or users. And you have document signing certificates for proving e-documents integrity. Now, the root and intermediate certificates issued by SSL.com are actually embedded in all major web browsers and operating systems by default. So that's kind of cool. And this gives SSL.com, among others, by the way, the ability to sell trusted certificates to websites and organizations. So that's really fantastic. So finally, let me talk to you about how do you get a CA certificates this year. Well, it really depends on the type of CA certificates you want to get. Okay, so to get a certificate from CAs like SSL.com or DigiCert, you'll need to fill out a certificate signing request at CSR and complete an order form. Now, the process is the same regardless of the type of TLS certificate you order. However, you will need to provide additional fields of information for OV and EV certificates. Remember that EV certificates are the largest or the highest layer of assurance. Okay, so basically the CA can complete your validation within less than a day or two. So you are able to get your TLS certificates within hours, not days. Now, keep in mind that all publicly trusted TLS SSL certificates are valid for a maximum period of 1 year, and you will need to revalidate every single year. So basically, when you are choosing a certificate authority, you want to understand several considerations like trust, customer service, brand recognition, cost, and available tools. So choosing a CA that you can trust is vital because your digital products and services and your end users' security is actually reliant upon the technology your CA provides. So that's important. And now, trusted CAs submit to regular audits by independent parties, follow industry guidelines, and maintain best practices to secure their infrastructure. Additionally, many CAs are heavily involved in industry groups and developing industry standards and are thought leaders in their space, providing you with the resources that you need. And so that's something to really think about, okay? And what I want to say here is that when it comes to getting data validation, just make sure that you are constantly on top of compliance, okay? Not only to compliance in your country, but compliance globally. So here's an epilogue. Into this conversation, I spoke to you about certificate authority. I explained to you what a CA really is, what the role is, how does a CA validate and issue certificates, among other things. And I also spoke to you about the three main types of TLS certificates. Thank you so much. God bless you. I will see you next time. Until then, remember, stay marvelous.